Greetings, I'm Keith Klein, the host of the VentureFizz Podcast, where I interview the most fascinating people in the tech scene. This is episode 395, and today's guest is Erez Kaminski, CEO and founder of Ketrix. As I've covered in multiple episodes of the VentureFizz Podcast, all industries are ripe for disruption with AI, especially life sciences. However, life sciences is difficult because it is heavily regulated, which makes it challenging for people to build a startup without that industry knowledge. Erez, on the other hand, has been working towards this moment for years in a calculated fashion. Desire to start a company? Check. That idea originated back in 4th or 5th grade. Experience in AI? Check. He began working with AI about 10 years ago. MIT educated? Check. Life sciences industry experience? Check. He led AI for Amgen's medical device division. This has all led him down the path of starting Ketryx, a high-growth startup that transforms the product lifecycle of life science teams to deliver safer products faster. The company has product market fit and is trusted by 3 of the world's top 5 medical device manufacturers. Its AI-powered compliance platform overlays existing tools to automate documentation, create traceability, and accelerate release cycles without disrupting existing workflows. Ketryx AI agents cut manual work by 90% and close compliance gaps, elevating speed and quality across the entire product lifecycle, which is extraordinary. The company just announced a $39 million Series B led by Transformation Capital with participation from existing investors, including Lightspeed Venture Partners, MIT's E14 Fund, Ubiquity Ventures, and 53 Stations. In this episode of our podcast, we cover lots of great topics like Erez's background story growing up in Israel and how he ended up playing American football in Israel for a league that was funded by the Kraft family, which led him to play football in college in Alabama, how he got into enterprise AI at Wolfram Research almost 10 years ago, and how his role at Amgen opened his eyes to the challenges in the industry, getting Ketrix started in the early days, the value and impact of the Ketrix platform, plus more of the details about the company's funding announcement, the culture at Ketrix and its hiring plans, and so much more. All right, now a brief word from our podcast sponsor, Silicon Valley Bank. I'm excited to share that this podcast is brought to you by one of the strongest longtime supporters of the local startup ecosystem, that being Silicon Valley Bank, a division of First Citizens Bank. SVB serves innovative tech, healthcare, and life sciences companies, including 60% of CNBC's Disruptor 50 list, 72% of Forbes Cloud 100 list, and 48% of Forbes AI 50 list companies. With more than 1,500 bankers and relationship advisors and $42 billion in loans through Q2 2024, SVB delivers the right people, service, and resources to support your entire financial journey. Learn more at svb.com. All right, without further ado, here's my interview with Erez. Erez, thanks so much for joining us.
Wonderful to be here, Keith. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to chat. So we did one of our what we call Discover videos not too long ago. So we were talking about Ketrix and what you guys do. But I had to do the full podcast interview with you because you have so much experience in depth, especially in the world of native AI, right? And obviously that's the whole world right now trying to figure out AI. So we're going to talk a lot about your experience in that domain. But there's some exciting news that I want to just jump to right away from the initial spot right now. And it is, of course, your company, and you have some exciting news about a Series B funding announcement. So let's talk about that first.
Yeah, we're pretty excited here at Ketrix. 1 Main Street, Cambridge now. We just closed our Series B led by Transformation Capital with participation from all of our existing investors, Lightspeed Venture Partners, the E14 Fund, Ubiquity Ventures, 53 Stations. We raised a total of $39 million to help build the future of regulated AI and regulated product development.
So this is go time. The Series B, I love. Like that's because seed A, you're still figuring out product market fit and, starting to scale. But once you hit the B round, this is go time, right?
Yeah, pedal to the metal.
Yeah. So Ketrix, future anchor company in the Boston tech scene, new headquarters, new space, and actually we're going to have pictures to give you the inside look of their office space real soon on VentureFizz. So stay tuned for that as well. All right. So let's get back into your background story. So where'd you grow up? What were you like as a child?
So I grew up in Haifa, Israel. It's a pretty big city. It's the 3rd biggest city in Israel. It's the capital of the northern part of Israel. It's a big port city, very old city. What was I as a kid? I think I used to think that I was more mischievous, but my parents seemed to say that I was a pretty easygoing child. Definitely not like mainstream. Like I think I at the time I had a hard time with anything that was very mainstream. So, I was very much into like alternative music and metal and went to all the concerts. And I was always kind of interested in math and physics and science, and I did extra kind of schooling around that. And at the same time, I was playing a lot of American football in Israel, and that's kind of what in Israel you have to go to the military. So I went to the military, and then after that, I ended up moving to the United States to play football here in a small college in Alabama, and so I'd say that like that period of my life I define as like going from less and less structured to kind of military structured to then like not in Alabama Crimson Tide, but an Alabama football team to like a very structured environment. I feel like in that kind of 4-year period is where I really discovered who I am and what kind of I'm trying to do with my life.
Well, I thought that piece was interesting. You're, playing football. You see the NFL is trying to always have, games in Europe to expand the audience, but I wasn't aware that, you know, y- when I heard you played football in Israel, I was like, oh, is that like, do they play over there? And then obviously you got recruited to play in the US. So that's impressive.
Yeah. And it's funny because it has this deep Boston connection where the Israeli Football League is actually called the Kraft Family Israeli Football League. And it was primarily funded by Robert Kraft and the family, who helped us build a league. I ended up being the captain of the Israeli national team at the time,
Really?
um, which is, it's like sounds bigger than it was, right? We were just like a bunch of folks trying to figure out how to play football. Um, And eventually I would say I was less recruited as much as I recruited myself. I just like, kind of went and called people and emailed people and find someone who was willing to give me a try. But I'd say it all comes down to actually the Kraft family helping establish it because I don't think we would have gotten anywhere without their funding and generosity and years and years and years of support. So um, I've never met them myself, but I could say they transformed my life um, more than almost anyone I've ever met.
It's really cool. Like, so what position did you play?
Well, in Israel, I played like left tackle. Eventually, when you come from Israel to the United States, you realize maybe you're not that big, especially now in Alabama. So I ended up playing defensive end, but then I actually moved into inside. I was like an inside defensive tackle and nose tackle. I was a bit undersized, but my coach would say that I was very mean, so that solved a lot of problems for us in that kind of role. And um, I think like playing football has everything to do with business. It's so similar. And one thing I tell my team all the time is I had a great coach. His name is Coach Cotton, and he now coaches actually the Dolphins defensive line. And I remember that this great guy would basically make us do fundamentals for about an hour and a half every practice. And he said, I could teach you the whole game, but like basically if you just do this real well, like it'll all solve itself. And that applies so well to business. But the problem is no one wants to do fundamentals for an hour and a half every day. And so greatness comes at a toll and um, something we talk about a lot at Ketrix.
It's so true. I mean, I didn't expect this was going to turn into a sports podcast, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper. Like, there's no, Steph Curry and Jordan, Tom Brady, the greats, they spent all those hours on their own time perfecting their art. And it became second nature, but you got to put in the time. It doesn't just magically happen. No one has that much talent to just be able to do it automatic. You have to put in the time, and all those people do.
Yeah, and I think that if football taught me one thing is that it's not about the will to win; it's about the will to prepare to win that matters. And right, because it's such a weird sport. You're like, how many hours do you practice compared to play? It's so upside down, and so you learn from that it's just okay. You just got to enjoy the process and enjoy preparing and be able to run a good routine for that. And again, it's the same in business. I do a lot of enterprise sales, enterprise kind of implementations. It's kind of very similar. If you get 30 minutes with an important VP, you'll prepare for that 30 minutes for a very, very long time.
And I,
lifetime, some might say.
well, that's a great analogy. And I heard the early foundation of you being a successful entrepreneur where you took the initiative to open the doors to play football in America, right? Like you found your
Yeah.
spot on the roster.
Yeah, yeah, that was my first true entrepreneurial endeavor, is figuring out how to
Yeah.
come here and entrepreneur myself into a football team.
Well, it's like a VCs. You got to open the doors and build relationships, and hopefully somebody says yes. And that,
Yeah, and it's
so
okay if a lot of people say no. You can't be shy. And if you feel like you have something to share with the world and you want to achieve it, it's going to be hard. Not everybody's going to love it, and that's okay.
all right. So what did you do after undergrad?
Yeah, so undergrad, for a short period of time, I worked as a physicist, both kind of in my final year of college and then a little bit after, in a lab, a national lab in Princeton called Princeton Plasma Physics Lab. I was helping them make fancy calculators, basically, that solve really complicated differential equations that govern how fusion reactors work and how plasma propagates under extreme temperatures. Mostly, I realized from that like I'm neither a great programmer nor a really great physicist. Like I think like I'm decent. I can sit around a room and you know grab some chalk like with the best of them. But there's some people that are just on a higher level. And I realized from that I really want to go into industry. And then I went to work for a company that combines all these things I'm not good at, which is computer science and physics, and uh, basically went to learn more about computer science, but through things I loved. And that company is called Wolfram Research. It's one of the, I'd say, most important mathematical computing companies. A lot of technology we think of today is based on designs they had. The idea of having a notebook interface, which is very famous now. Jupyter is kind of a version of the Mathematica notebook. And I went to work there as the special assistant to the CEO, Stephen Wolfram. Did that for about a year. Learned a lot about business, the business of developer tooling, the business of mathematical computing, and kind of how to think about the enterprise. They have a pretty significant enterprise practice. And then spent another year really doing mostly kind of business development and implementation, which was very, very fortunate for what I'm doing now. And one day I was giving actually a talk at a conference, and about how to build enterprise AI solutions. We were building a lot of AI. Wolfram Alpha, which is the engine behind Siri, was one of the OG kind of AI engines, and um, was
And
basically
wait, I
explaining.
want to pause real quick because I need to give it context of the time frame of what we're talking about because this is 2017,
Yeah, 2016, 2017,
26. Yeah, so
2018.
this is like you're doing AI, yet now it's everywhere. But this is almost
Yeah,
10 years
yeah.
ago.
Yeah, it's funny because at the time it felt like I totally missed the train. I was like, I need to find something else, maybe crypto. But uh, you know, I I think it was obvious then that a lot of these things are going to happen and are going to get better and better. Um, I think it's always hard to imagine how much better it can get. But the building blocks were always there to do like language generation, question answering, all this kind of picture, video modifications that you see, like generate an image like this or that. It used to be all about changing zebras into horses and oranges into apples and winter into summer and summer into winter. And then
Right.
it like, okay, like this can go to a whole other level. And so, yeah, it was almost 10 years ago. I'd say I was really at the center of it with a bunch of really brilliant people that I was basically running around trying to learn from. And we were thinking a lot about how this looks at large enterprises, right? So there is two kind of revolutions going on. One is the computer vision revolution that started in 2012 with AlexNet and, really was going on in full force 28, 16, 17, 18, 19. Same time, a lot of NLP, NLU, and kind of the original kind of language models, transformers were coming out a little bit later after that, and but you started to see the momentum build, and we were thinking a lot about how this looks in the enterprise. And so, in one of these engagements where I go to a conference and I explain what does it mean to do data science and AI and machine learning in the enterprise, someone came up to me and said that they represent a large biopharmaceutical company called Amgen. Didn't know too much about Amgen at the time, and they offered me to come join Amgen to be the head of AI for their medical device drug delivery group here in Kendall, actually, in Amgen, Massachusetts, AMA. And Kendall Square One, legendary site. Just some of the smartest people I've ever met. And I decided to take the job for a lot of reasons. One is it just connected me back to my family's roots, which is a lot of medicine and nurses and physicians. And it just seemed like a great career opportunity. And it was like Amgen is one of the most amazing companies in the world. It is a powerhouse of scientific innovation um, and development. They don't just do science; they build, medicine that changes people's lives at a massive scale. Uh, and there, I ran into this issue that we ended up solving with Ketrix, which is how do you develop AI systems? How to use AI systems in the development of regulated products? And how do you do that as fast as a regular development, non-regulated product?
Because I was curious, I'm like, so what was the AI use then for Amgen? Like, was it in their products somehow, some way, or was it for across their enterprise in other ways? I just wasn't sure in 2018 what they were
I
doing.
can't talk too much about what Amgen was doing, but I could tell you examples of what people in pharma do in general and published information. So, I think there's great papers about how you can use natural language processing to look at complaint records or malfunctions and deviations and investigate what's going on. You could use computer vision to look at fill finish, like basically like kind of finished pharmaceutical drugs in a container, and then you check if they have any kind of bubbles and stuff like that or any excipients, um, and many, many more things that were more in the science fiction domain that we were bringing and making them less science fiction. Um, and there's so many famous problems in this space, right? Like, how do you predict the quality of a drug early on? Um, but then also, of course, there's so much work being done back then and today in AI for diagnostics, AI for calculating drug delivery doses. Um, i in pharma, it's just obvious that it needs to be everywhere because there's so much work to do, and the work is so complex and it requires such a high level of training. And at the same time, like the IT systems are so legacy and kind of early on in their journey that there's just a big room for software. And for me, it was just obvious that this is kind of what I want to do in life. Like, felt very comfortable to combine my time in developer tooling with my family's background in medicine and help people build devices. But also, we realized just how hard it was to build these type of AI systems. Like, one thing I do remember is I was thinking for a long time, man, if we build some of these AI systems, sure, we'll make the first version, but how are we ever going to rev it and make another version? Like, our infrastructure is not really built for that. And that idea, after a lot of like thoughtfulness and customer interviews, but that idea of how hard it is became Ketrix. Like, what if it doesn't need to be that hard?
Well, the the one thing that we skipped over is so you also continued your education at
Yeah, yeah,
MIT. So
yeah.
I'm not gonna skip over that part.
No, no, you're not. And it's all Boston, right? So I go to Amgen. Um, I really am thoughtful about this problem. I think it's very challenging. Um, I actually, see a lot of challenges my family had. My mom has a medical device implanted near her brain called a cochlear implant. They have all kinds of challenges, the devices. And I kept thinking, like, wow, is this one of the reasons people like my mom have challenges with their devices? Like, is this all related? And this really couldn't kind of leave me because I was like, wow, if it is related, maybe there's like a real systematic solution and we can help a bunch of different people solve this and do better. And that led me eventually to kind of leave Amgen to go back to school. Left for a few reasons. One of them, my visa. Another is this kind of program at MIT and this frustration. And then I would go into an amazing program at MIT called Leaders for Global Operations, where you do 2 master's degrees in 2 years at MIT. I studied a master's in electrical engineering, computer science, and an MBA. Went to intern at a wonderful firm during my time there. Amgen is actually one of the partner companies for this program. So, a lot of Amgen alums uh, at LGO, a lot of LGO alums at Amgen, um, and spent I'd say like 2 good semesters at MIT. And then about one, two, like 4 semesters of COVID at MIT. Um, and during that time in COVID, I really sat around and who is now my father-in-law's basement, taking some classes and thinking what I want to do next. And again, this problem didn't really leave me. And I spent most of COVID trying to figure out how to solve this better and better. And um, called a friend of mine who worked with me for at Wolfram Research, who is this brilliant scientist named Jan Pashko. He is, one of the greatest web developers alive today, open source evangelist, developed many, many open source applications, eventually found himself at Wolfram Research building the Wolfram Cloud project and parts of Wolfram Alpha, and kind of shared with him what I wanted to do over the next few years, which is build a way to accelerate the rate of medical innovation, especially AI and software. We both share this deep passion for software and the belief that the digitization of intellect in software is the next big revolution, and kind of on this journey of automation that started from having like better ways to plow a field and led to better ways to mine and better ways to transport is now like better ways to think and better ways to use logic. And we thought that we want to invest very heavily in that, and maybe we're in a good position to help with that. And so um, basically when I graduated MIT, and it's funny because I'm still in the same area. Like my office is right next to MIT Sloan,
Yeah,
and
totally.
I worked before here right across the street. I've never left. I've been in Kendall Square for 10 years of my life. Um, we were really, really fortunate to meet two great venture capitalists that are part of MIT's ecosystem. They run a fund called the E14 Fund, Habib Haddad and Calvin Chin, and they believed in us, before it made sense, I think, to believe in us. And them together with Sunil at Ubiquity Ventures gave us kind of the original seed money to start building. We got in our first customer. It was a Fortune 500 customer, is one of the largest life science manufacturers in the world, and kind of everything snowballed from there.
Okay, we're gonna dissect that. So, well, before I get into the start of the business, like, did you always think you'd want to start a business someday? Like, was like entrepreneurial roots was kind of like what you were
You
thinking?
know, in two different directions. One is like I'm Israeli, like all you read about in the news there is just like the TV series when you're growing up are about like founders. It's the zeitgeist of everything. And for me, at the same time, I could tell you the day I realized I want to start a company. I was like in fourth or fifth grade, and I used to go to like extra school for kids who have dysgraphy and dyslexia, um, because I couldn't know how to read and write until like third grade, maybe. I still don't feel like I really know how to read and write well. And I remember sitting outside waiting for my dad to pick me up and thinking, what should I do with my life? Maybe I should go be a teacher in a place like that to help kids like me who have all this hard time. And then I thought about it a lot, and I said, maybe it'd be better if I could like build a business and then I could, help something like this. 'Cause that's more scalable. And I think that's kind of when I realized I probably want to start a company eventually. It just took me, another like 20 years to realize what company it would be, and wanted to get some experience and all that journey kind of through coming to the US, going to work for Stephen Wolfram, going to work at Amgen was in my mind like steps in that goal of like, I want to learn something from a CEO. It'd be good to go work for one. I want to go see how a big company is run, maybe find a good enterprise problem to solve. And then, you go to school because, if MIT allows you to go there, I applied quite a bit of times before they let me actually get accepted. And so went there. And I'd say that like I just knew that like this is the time for me to do it, and um, this was not the first idea I wanted to work on. Like I always had it in the back of my mind, but it seemed so hard. Like how am I ever going to sell to a big pharmaceutical company or a big medical device company as a small startup? Like that doesn't sound like a great idea. And then if you dissect the market, it's not really a great idea to just sell to like the small companies either because they come and go. Um, but I ended up realizing it's one idea that I had that was built to last, and my partner really got jazzed up about it, and we kind of understood how this would look, and it leveraged a lot of our background and our knowledge of developer tooling. Um, and so we just wanted to go and build it and see how far we can get.
Okay, so you do have the pedigree and experience to go build what Ketrix is. So uniquely qualified to build, right? Yet it's hard. so, so what you're doing in a highly regulated industry where you're helping with the regulation, the, selling to a Fortune 500 company out of the gates. Like, so how did you even get started building the platform to the point where this company was like, sure, we're going to partner with this startup?
We, we thought about it a lot. I'd start by saying that, look, we spent an immense amount of time designing the product. I mean, like a year or two, just thinking how an interaction could look that solves this problem. And reading all the regulation. And I think that that was really inspiring because when you first enter the industry, you keep on thinking, the regulation is all broken. We need to fix something. And if we only fix the regulation, medical innovation would just explode. But the problem is in medicine, you don't need innovation. What you need is safe innovation to make sure that it's safe for patients, right? Before it, do no harm before you do any harm. And I think it's very easy to always blame regulation. That's kind of how I was until you read it. And then you realize that, like, is it really the regulation? Like, regulation is always under fire, right? Everybody wants to blame the regulation. And I think it has to do with it being easy to fix. Like, you feel like you could just petition Washington and they change a little line and then it'll all get unplugged. But over time, what you realize is what's really, stifling innovation is the way people do compliance and the kind of compliance practices we have and processes to comply with that regulation. Like the regulation, and I could tell you in medical devices, is pretty minimal. Explain what the device does. Show us that you have a way to prove that it does those things. Um, and we also knew that AI could like radically transform that proposition of why is it so hard to do compliance? Maybe it doesn't have to be. And if you have the right team and the right tool and the right solution process, you could actually solve it fundamentally. And I think that when we first showed it to customers, very early on, like again, one of maybe the first person we ever showed to was this Fortune 500 kind of center of excellence folks, and they just immediately saw the value in what we were doing and wanted to move forward. And I think it's because we developed something with the use case in mind, with the customer in mind, with a very, very specific value proposition. Till this day, if you look at our product, you can almost read the value in the ROI because it's so tied to its design. It's very minimalistic and it just does this thing that reduces cost and accelerates time to market.
But these early customers must have had a vote of confidence that your background, the problem, you saw that you dealt with the problem, you have the industry knowledge to go build this versus like someone, it would be, I would think remote, like not impossible, but highly unlikely someone coming from another industry would be able to do what you've built.
I think there's a lot of great teams out there and a lot of great products. So it's hard for me to tell, but I think for us, it definitely was an advantage to come and say, we do understand your problem. We don't understand the problem in the highest levels, right? Like we understand what it means to build AI and software and hardware products at the world's largest companies, which is a very different thing than building it in a small company. It's all because of the impact and the criticality. Criticality is a measure of how dangerous something is. And so if the risk is really critical, that means you can injure a lot of people, like hundreds and tens of thousands of people. And that's the problem with like at scale pharma or at scale medtech is like a mistake won't impact a person. A mistake will impact tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of people. And so the way they perceive the world and their risk calculation is very foreign to someone who hasn't worked there. And I think that was a big advantage that we do understand kind of the mindset. And we also hired the right people for that. One of our first US hires was the former head of FDA software engineering lab, who, I got to say this to Calvin Shin from E14's, I'm very fortunate to have met him because he just found him online. He's like, you should call this guy. He seems like the right person. And so we cold called him. We convinced him to come do this. And then through him, we also learned the other side of the equation of like, what's the FDA looking for? And yeah, I think spending the right time of working in the industry and doing all the things you're supposed to do helped us a lot.
That's fascinating. So I didn't know that was part of your team, which now I'm like, wow, yeah, you did have both sides of the equation covered because the FDA has their requirements of what they need. So it's not just the medical device company, it's both sides that really, really
Yeah.
matter.
And the
So
FDA is, some might say, is the biggest customer.
Yeah. Well, so what's the old way versus how does Ketrix help?
Yeah. So the old way, which is rooted in like practices from the 60s and 70s, is to make a scalpel. And when you make a scalpel, you need to write on paper, physical paper, what the scalpel does. The scalpel has this length. It's sharp like this. It can cut through skin. It's biocompatible with your hand. You can hold it, right? There's all these things that it needs to be. It doesn't weigh too much. Let's say that takes about 50 pages to really explain what a scalpel does, the type of metal it needs to be, and the risk associated with a scalpel, and how, it's probably not a good idea to have it sharp on both ends. For example, like you don't think about that, but there's some dossier somewhere that explains, listen, that's not a good idea, because you'll cut yourself or, whatever not. And so they take that technique, which is creating evidence in paper and creating something called traceability, which is basically linking how all the use cases and requirements and testing all connect together in risk management. And now you need to scale it not to a scalpel, but to a surgical robot that is holding a scalpel in another room with a doctor that is holding a joystick performing, surgery. And I will tell you that in most companies, they still do that compliance and regulatory affairs work in the same way that they did the scalpel with people on pieces of paper. But instead of 50 pages, you have 5,000, 15,000 pages. And so these companies become like documentation factories, right? And it is the bane of everybody's existence. Like no one is really happy that they're doing so much documentation, but they just take it to be part of the job. And so I think maybe being an outsider coming from outside of the industry, from a tech company into Amgen and just seeing like, where's the CI/CD build for this? That was the inspiration to figure out a better way to do it. And the way we do it is, one is we interconnect your systems. We inject AI agents that allow you to author documents, review them, support you in all different facets of your work, from early research to development to testing to kind of release into the market and post-market, which is like the activity of monitoring if the device or the drug is safe. And all of that is done in a way that generates evidence all the time. So documentation is generated automatically from the work you're doing. And for some teams, that takes them from a year-long release process to a week.
Wow.
Like it's a radical transformation in how you work.
I hope you are enjoying this interview. Just a brief word from our sponsor. As a longtime champion in the local startup ecosystem, Silicon Valley Bank supports innovative companies with the solutions and financing they need through every stage of growth. With more than 1,500 bankers and relationship advisors and $42 billion in loans through Q2 2024, SVB delivers the right people, service, and resources to support your entire financial journey. Learn more at svb.com. And it's under the guidelines of the FDA.
Under the guidelines of the FDA, and it works. It actually works. It works at big scale. Millions and millions of patients use devices built on Ketrix. And I think most people that are experts in the field that understand what it does and how it works say that this is a way safer approach than the industry standard approach, which to me is the son of a patient. What is a bigger compliment in life than saying, we actually built something that's not just saving people money, not just accelerating them, but actually making the devices safer. And we now have even evidence of that, which is kind of cool.
What is there, like, did your software have to get approved by the FDA for this submission?
It's a good question. Our software doesn't need to. It needs to be like it's under the person submitting the device. But our software is, regulated by the device manufacturer in a way. So I wouldn't say I comply with regulation, but the device manufacturer needs to comply with the regulation for the software they use. And then we thought a lot about that. Like, how can we unburden them even more? Because, now they need to do a bunch of work to use our tools. And what we ended up doing is we went to UL. Do you know that little UL sticker that you have underneath kind of,
The light bulb?
light bulbs and
Yeah.
stuff like that? So Ketrix actually has a UL sticker that says that we are a safe and effective, and we are certified from a safety perspective like a medical device. And we're the only IT system I know of today that has done that, but is not a medical device. And the reason is it's because it's supposed to be extremely expensive to do that.
So it's fascinating. So I just remember I was recruiting in the probably early 2000s, if my memory's correct. And there was this company in Waltham called Phase Forward. And they
Yeah, of
were
course,
doing
straightforward.
electronic data capture for clinical trial studies with submission to the FDA. And they got acquired by Oracle. So none of these enterprise software companies that are doing the life sciences, medical device, healthcare they're not, well, man, I guess I'm
That's a
going to
great
ask my own
question.
question.
And
Yeah.
by the way, we're big fans of Phase Forward. Paul Bleicher, Richard Dale,
Yes.
we're really close to them, and they're part of our journey. Well, actually, it's funny because we're in the same building as Phase Forward. So when those guys come to visit us, they're like, "Wow, this brings back memories." So those type of systems, what we call GXP systems, so good X practices systems for, in that case, in the Phase Forward Oracle Health Cloud, good clinical practice GCP systems. In our system, it's actually even a higher rating. It's called GMP, good manufacturing practices. You're right. That's kind of where we fall under the I'd say under compliance requirements, because I'm not regulated. The manufacturer that uses me is, but they would like me to comply with basically GMP requirements, which we do, and we have evidence of that. But it's very similar to like a medical device. Just again, prove that it works. Like you can think about it like if you have a blender in a pharmaceutical factory and the recipe to make a life-saving drug says that it needs to blend the material at 1 round per minute. They mean like literally 1 round per minute, and you need to test it with a stopwatch and all that. And so we kind of do that type of stuff for ourselves. GXP. It's pretty difficult. It's almost as difficult as making a high-risk medical device.
And I mean, this is an enterprise sale. So I would imagine the sales process is complex, but once you are part of how they develop software or how they use software to obviously do all the documentation for the medical device, it's not like something they can swap out easily. Like it's you're deeply rooted into what they're doing.
Yeah. And I think that's why we needed to have a pretty unique team to do it that is more than just a product. It's a full solution. It's like a platform that involves people, processes, and technology that allow you to embed this technology with your company, that allows you to gain value and implement it, and be successful in using it. And so we have a team of great experts in validation, which is what we're talking about, this type of regulation, in regulatory affairs and quality assurance that help customers understand how to use this technology, how to improve their own internal processes. And today I'm very happy to share that we've worked now with many Fortune 500s to actually rethink not just technologically how they can work faster, but how to rebuild their processes to work faster. And so we offer this complete enterprise solution, which is a big differentiator. And one of the reasons that um, kind of love this is the fact that we're partnering so deeply with companies. We're not a vendor for the companies we work with. We're like a true partner that is with them. We are working with them every day. We are talking to them every day, and we're helping them solve the hardest problems in the world. What's funny is we kept the product kind of open, like you could register online, and so startups started to register, and so we do have like quite a bit of kind of growth in startup customers. We even offer it for free for small enough companies, so they just kind of can get the FDA. We have people who have basically spent almost no money and gotten through like an FDA or an EU medical device submission, which has always been the dream. Um, which is like crazy. This is usually very expensive stuff, and we've gotten companies there at almost no funding. From there we saw like kind of growth companies come in, but then we realized over time that like the enterprises want even a more complete solution than just a product, and that's been a lot of fun. And at the end of the day, if you want to impact medicine is run by very large companies because it's high barriers to entry, it's very risk averse, and you need a lot of capital to play in the surgical robot space. And I think that we have a product that solves really unique enterprise needs and a sales process that helps them understand the problems they have and the type of value you can unlock for them. And then we have a way to consistently deliver that value within a product that I think most people think is just light years ahead of the state of things. Like today, you can come into Ketrix and you could make a medical device. Like, I mean, within 25 minutes, automatically with a AI, like it reads kind of your pitch deck about your device and it'll just start building it for you.
Well, I wanted to ask you, so back in May, you announced the launch of validated AI agents. Like, what do people need to know about that?
That it is the way people all over the world are going to build regulated products going forward. It is a set of agents and tools that interoperate across IT systems through Ketrix and the Ketrix platform and allow you to do everything from draft your compliance documentation to check if your tests are correct, understands if you have conflict. And I think that at the core of it, it's again this ability to take human intelligence augmented with a computer with logic and then help a person do so many different tasks. Like instead of them just doing work themselves, they can launch agents that do a lot of different things for them. And those agents learn and improve and get better over time. And, we're seeing now just the immense acceleration it gives folks. And I see people that say, I just can't believe that this, exists now. Like this is a quote from a customer at a Fortune 500 company last week said, I can't believe you all built this. Like it's so important. It's so well needed. Um, and the agents are really about taking that to the next step of what if you can really have workers that do parts of labor that people are used to doing now, but through a computer.
Amazing. Yeah. So you recently spent time like refining your culture. Like culture is obviously so important. It's not just the people, it's the culture to build great companies. What did you think about as it relates to that? And like what are you looking as far as ahead of with growth with the Series B funding?
Yeah. So we're very fortunate to have some experienced people around us. One of them is a great guy who's our chief marketing officer, Brian Katzman, used to be employee number 1000 in Google and VP of marketing at Tile and many other great companies in Ubico. Um, and we always had values like from the first day before we hired anyone, but he always wanted them to be better and more kind of short, more actionable, more tied to certain things. And so we went on this journey a few months ago of how do we update our values to represent who we are now and who we want to be in a year or 2 years, because we knew we were about to go through a significant growth stage. And we also knew that we wanted them to be short. We wanted them to be things that we could talk about all the time and on an annual basis and help people understand how they meet those values. Just today, we had a great meeting, and one of our employees said, yes, but like that result, what value does that represent, that decision? And I was like, okay, we're onto something here. Um, and the 6 values we came out with are: one is move on what matters, which I think is the core of everything you want to do in a startup. 2 is give autonomy and own it. We think that it's all about giving people responsibility and watching them do great things with that. The 3rd is scale quality to consequence, which when you're working on one hand on, marketing material and on the other hand on safety critical infrastructure for pacemakers, those 2 things need to be dealt with in a radically different way. Can't do the marketing material like you do the pacemakers. The 4th is chase hard problems together and celebrate wins together because we want to enjoy the time here. 5th is continuously learn, nurture each other. And then the last one is do what compounds, which has always been a mantra here of like making sure we're doing the things that would make sense in the long run.
Companies that take their culture and values seriously, like I see through the podcast and others, those are the companies that most companies have a set of values, but do they actually follow through and practice what they preach there? It doesn't always happen. But the ones that, like I had both founders of Acquia on the podcast, and they early days, there's an actual picture with Dries and Jay writing down the values, and they're like, those values are still hold up today. They're still the core to Acquia. So it's kudos to you
And
guys for
yeah,
realizing
and at
that.
the end of the day, a company is just a group of people with a shared mission. So if you can help them align on a mission, our mission is to make systems safe and reliable and give them values that they can use and track that and give them goals that they're trying to achieve and give them mentors to help them guide them down those goals and then a community of people to help support them on their journey that share the same set of values. I think that's what it's all about, and that's how you build successful businesses and successful teams.
All right. Well, with this new office space, you need to hire more people to fill it. So, what's the plans for hiring and growth ahead there?
We are hiring across basically every position, and we're hiring in two main locations in Vienna, Austria, and Boston, Massachusetts. We're hiring folks for AI positions, for customer success, for sales, for full stack development, for front end development, HR people, both for talent acquisition and talent development. And I honestly just couldn't be more excited for this period in our company's life and in my life. And I think that um, what we're building now is something we'll remember for a long time. And I could already tell you that, you know, if there's one thing I can share with someone who's thinking of coming to work here is when you go to a hospital. I was in a hospital a few weeks ago with my wife, who's now feeling a lot better. But as I'm sitting there, she's connected to a device. And I'm thinking, wait a second, am I meeting with a team that makes that device next week to help make the next version? And, don't you know? Of course I was. And so to me, that's kind of what I think about when I'm talking to people about why come work here is if you want to work on the coolest technology with the smartest people that see all the coolest products that anyone's developing out there, but also have a great mission to help people out, this is the place to do it.
No, it's such a compelling mission. I mean, it impacts so many people, and obviously, it's making medical devices get approved faster, faster to market, help people out. There's just so many great levers of what you're doing and why it's so meaningful. So, what's the vibe in Boston? There's AI is obviously having its moment. So, what's that looking like in the Boston tech scene as relates to your point of view?
I think Boston has been and always will be the center of like hard sciences in the United States. And I think AI is just another hard science. I think that there's a reason that so many companies are moving their digital research, AI research here, whether that's pharma companies or media companies like Verizon. They see the amount of college grads here. And I think Boston is, it's going to be like it always has been focused on B2B. Like we are talking about a number of companies, like it's very B2B focused, very healthcare focused. But I also think it has unbelievable AI talent. There's a bunch of good meetups. We ourselves are starting some groups around building kind of regulated AI and regulated products in that space. Um, but I think there is a growing kind of community of entrepreneurship around it. But there has been for a long time, right? Boston Dynamics.
Yeah, yeah.
Like this is the source of a lot of this technology that's out there. And we definitely find here an amazing community of engineers that we recruit quite heavily from.
So you closed your Series B round. You've raised now multiple rounds. What advice would you have for first-time founders on raising capital, especially that you always hear, oh, the A round, the B round, like,
All the
they
rounds are
see.
really hard, right? It's every time
Yeah,
the
exactly. So what
pre-seed, the
advice?
seed. I don't know if I don't feel like I'm any authority to give anyone advice about anything. Um, I think that more than anything, I'm just a very, very lucky guy who is working on a problem that's really important to him. Um, and I happen to have found a great partner. Um, and so I don't really know what I can tell people that's practical. It's all so unique, but I can tell them that if you work on a problem that matters to you, that'll help. If the problems that matter to you happen to have large total addressable markets, that helps a lot. I think you need to be able to articulate a strong business case into why someone would buy it, and have a sharp vision. And then, the more traction, the better. And I think today, right, it's kind of easier to build than ever with, Claude Code, Lovable. There's so many different platforms that people use now. And so I think getting out there and just talking to customers and confirming that what you think is right is a good idea. And I also think like if you want to do enterprise, go work at a bunch of big enterprises. You will learn their problems from that.
I mean, you're humble, which is a good thing. But like you said, like you made each move. It was almost like a methodical way to get where you are now to build the company. So how much did you practice your pitch, and what did your just what did the deck look like? Like, was it I mean, because I don't think entrepreneurs always think about how important it is to practice your pitch and have the right things at the right time in the deck.
Yeah, and I think that it depends also if like what kind of entrepreneurship are you doing? Are you bootstrapping a business? Are you trying to get like just seed money, substantial growth money, right? Do you want to be on like a venture track? Um, but I'd say, I follow a pretty standard like Sequoia kind of structure. It's if you Google like Sequoia pitch decks, they share the same thing. Like, what are you doing? Why now? What's the
Why
product?
us?
What's the market size? What's the team traction? And for me, it always was about showing a very, very large market because the opportunities is a bit complicated and this is not like an obvious one in a way. And to try and drag people into that world of saying like, if you believe this, that there's companies out there that need to make hundreds of thousands of pages of evidence all the time. And if you believe that they're still doing that by hand, don't you think they want an AI native solution to generate all that compliance packet for them and make it simple? And then I think a lot of investors answer the question with, no, I don't believe any of that. It's a terrible idea. And you shouldn't be doing this. And then some people, you will find some people who say yes. And I was very lucky to meet Calvin and Habib early on from E14 that kind of helped me learn about this venture world and how to get into that and helped me improve my pitch and introduced us to kind of Sunil from Ubiquity Ventures and eventually to Lightspeed and Guru Chahal at Lightspeed, who's um, the most amazing B2B SaaS investor I could ever wish for to be a partner and to come teach me how to do this. Um, but I think it's always about, showing honesty and curiosity and making sure that you understand what they're looking for as well, right? Like it's same thing with enterprise sales. It's like, what are they trying to get out of this? Well, they're trying to fund companies that, are mission driven because everybody wants to be part of something important or can scale it a certain way, have a big enough market, have that chance of a big opportunity. And then you need to help them see that and basically solve it with them.
All right, 3 apps you can't live without. It can't be Slack, calendar, or email.
3 apps I can't live without. Spotify, easy. Um, I want to say something more sophisticated. Like right now, I have a a Dexcom Stello patch on me, so I do like the Stello app by Dexcom. I think it's a great product. And then I would say either Google Maps or like a ChatGPT. Man, I do love a good LLM to talk and solve problems late at night. But with that said, I think Google Maps is pretty solid application. But those are like the things I use the most, and WhatsApp. But WhatsApp is like Slack, right? Like you can't say WhatsApp. Everybody uses
What was the second one?
WhatsApp. The second one, I think I said Stello.
Yeah, I'm not familiar
Oh,
with
so
that.
this is like an on-body, like a glucose monitor. It's off the shelf. It's not prescribed. You can get it off Amazon or whatever, and it helps you track your glucose levels and see kind of where you are. I tried it for the first time. And I kind of like it. It helps you track where you are on like the day and when you're getting tired and not tired and when you need to eat and help you learn a little bit about your own kind of biomarkers and your kind of cycle through the day. Um, yeah, those are the 3 apps, but I would say Spotify is a hard one to live without. Like such a revolutionary idea.
Great. I use it so much. Like it's such value. Like I appreciate their price point because I get a lot of value out of it.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
How about podcast or book recommendation for entrepreneurs?
So I listen to a lot of books. Again, I'm like really
Me too.
dysgraphic and
With Spotify,
dyslexic. Yeah, yeah.
one and a
Or
half, 2 times, sometimes like 2x.
yeah. Um, so a book I really like right now is Amp It Up by Frank Slitman, the CEO of Snowflake. This dude knows more about high growth businesses, I think, than almost any person. I'm a big fan of that right now. Actually, just gave it to the whole team here. Um, Podcast. I recently, we work with a company called Flow Health, and we have they have an amazing, um, CEO, Dimitri. who is just this amazing founder. There's something so charismatic about him. And he was telling me you should watch my episode at 20 VC. Um, and
Wow, he's on 20 VC. Okay,
I
Harry.
would recommend to anyone to watch this episode. This dude knows so much about SaaS and entrepreneurship, and he gives this piece of advice there that I think like I'll take for the rest of my life, where he says, people often confuse that the metrics of an app have to do with an app, but it doesn't have to do with an app. It has to do with a use case. If you're doing like a fitness app, you'll always have bad retention. The best fitness app in the world will have bad retention because gyms have bad retention. And this whole podcast is like just like a master of software and software go to market, like teaching everything he has. He's such a fascinating person. That's probably my favorite podcast right now.
Okay, I'm going to check that episode out. I'm excited to listen to that. What do you do for fun outside of work?
I work out, lift weights, I run, I cycle. Boston is the greatest place in the world to cycle. Probably one of the main reasons I live here is I can bike to work and back. And then I hang out with my dogs. Love dogs.
Hey, you could kayak to work at where your office is,
I
right?
could, yeah. That's what for my wife. We just need to live in the city and
Yeah.
jump in the, go from the back bay kayak. Exactly. You know exactly
I
where
remember
we are.
Indeka
Kayaking.
had people kayaking to work in that building, I think. So back
Yeah,
before
that's
they were required by
actually like,
Oracle.
it's not crazy, right? If I only lived closer to the river, I live
Right.
on the highway.
Okay.
But I could bike and then put the bike on a kayak and then kayak. It'll be like an entire endeavor. But sometimes we do, in a nice summer day, we grab a drink and we go kayak. Like this is one of our favorite after work activities. And I just think like Boston, just to close the wrap about Boston and AI, this is the place to be. Like if you want to do AI for hard science, if you want to do AI for healthcare, this is the center of the universe. Right. And that's what I think about people who are looking to work somewhere and want to discover what the AI revolution means for the most important industries. I think we're the place to come do this. Is AI in healthcare, the leading company for the infrastructure for AI in healthcare. First year the platform's on the market is last year. 2% of all FDA submissions for AI are done on Ketrix already. In the center of all life science innovation in Kendall Square, and with a team of people who live and breathe this industry. And I feel so fortunate to have been in Boston and do this. And it's just it's the city for this type of business. And there's endless talent, endless opportunity. There's so many events around here. And everybody knows it's happening, right? Whether it's drug discovery or medical device diagnostics or the development of all these things, like AI is going to be at the center of all of that.
Well, Erez, thank you so much for taking the time to walk through your background story. Obviously, congratulations again on the Series B round of funding to you and the whole team. And I'm excited to see the future ahead for Ketrix.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Keith. Such a pleasure to see you.